There are risks if we just define a high value man by the material things we're going to see. It's going to produce a sense of entitlement. It's going to create scenarios where the priority is on the optics, right? You look good, feel good, play good, pay good. You know, that whole thing. I love Deion Sanders and that saying, but these become risks because it can reduce a relationship to nothing more than a transaction. Welcome back to the Dr. Jill White Show. Now, today we're going to have a conversation about the high value man. That's right, a term that's been debated, it's been defended, it's been criticized, it's even shown up on people's social media pages, a conversation and a topic that's been popularized by, God rest his soul, Brother Kevin Samuels. But yet this topic of the high value man has become part of a legacy that we're seeing on podcast shows all over the place. Now, I'm going to tell you, I'm not here to debate and you get into the drama, but to simply clarify the difference between a high value man and what I want to introduce today as a high quality man, and examine whether or not these two pieces here have any place or whether or not they can even coexist. But I'm going to tell you, but there is in fact a big difference between the two. And so we have to take a look at this. Why? Because one of these are instrumental in shaping relationships, strengthening families, building up marriages, and have what I call generational outcomes. And the other, well, it just focuses on the here and now. So we have to take a look at it. And I want to jump into it today. I think we really need to get into it. And I'm going to challenge every brother here to take an inventory, because later on, I'm going to test whether or not this is your universal truth or whether or not this is your convenient truth. Let me say that again. A universal truth, so that you know, that means you believe it in every condition, circumstance, versus the universal truth, it's convenient for the argument that I want to make. All right. So now the social media and what we've seen around the concept of a high value man, we know it is laid out. It's his six-figure salary. It's his job title. It's his prestigious income. It's his network. It's his clients. It's his leverage. It's all the things that we see on a daily basis. We know these things to be his truth. Somehow his value and his income is tied to his worth and his earnings. It's tied into his increased social ability. All these things we love, and everybody buys into it. This is what we see in our social media. But I'm going to challenge it, because something's missing. If the only thing we use to determine the value of a person is their financial network, then we might be setting ourselves up. And so let's look at it, because in all of that finance and all that success, all that we see that you put forward, but if the brother's still struggling emotionally, if he still has all those childhood traumas and a bucket load of triggers, then how does that value look? What about his communication, or whether or not he even has empathy? How does that high value look? And so now we are going to see that there may be something wrong with that being the sole definition of a man, his financial success. Because the problem is that financial success does not automatically equate to emotional maturity, or even his family or financial or family stability, or even his ability to even attach with his children and family. And so this is why we have to push the envelope. Now, with all that being said, let's examine the concept of what I want to introduce as a high quality man. All right, this is someone who has the longevity, someone who's likely to have long-term marriages, because the high quality man is not defined exclusively by his income, but first, we're going to examine the quality of his character, his integrity, his emotional stability. These are qualities, right? The other is materialism. Now we're talking about intrinsic values, his consistency, characteristics of his accountability. These are quality pieces, right? His ability to have respect for other people. So, y'all, this is where I have to kind of draw the line when I just measure it by the financial piece. And yes, the money and security is important, but respect for others is equally important. His sense of family responsibility is equally important. So it's not so much what you can always do for your family, right, in terms of the financial buying things and all that, but the notion of what you could do to your family in terms of support. So this is the characteristics that we have to focus on. So the high quality man will keep his word. He becomes known by his word, right? He manages conflicts without destruction. So now everything I'm getting into is around the beingness of an individual, his value, his partnership. These things are more important than dominance and competition and competitiveness. These are a little different because this is the quality. And brothers, I'm going to tell you right now, if you have a daughter, these are going to be the very things you're going to be teaching her to look out for and to understand and to have an appreciation for in a young man. That's my hint about the convenient truth. This is what we see that leads to the stability that's more important than anything, because what sustains relationships from a long-term standpoint is not necessarily the salary, but it's the behavior. So we have to pause. We have to really kind of take a look at comparing these two pieces here. Now, again, I really want to define, if I'm really honest about it, I want to redefine the notion of a high value man and include in it the quality and characteristics. But to treat them completely separate, we're going to have problems. So here's what I mean. So if I think about the high value focus as the single thing that's going to determine whether or not this is a good man, you're going to see the emphasis on the income, the lifestyle, the image, the status, all his external achievements. The world loves him, but his wife and children can't stand his ass. I'm just going to be real. But the high quality person, on the other hand, we're going to see, which is what I'm making an argument about, his character. He becomes known by his word. His reputation enters the room before he does. He has a sense of emotional intelligence. That means the ability to recognize things that are impacting him and the ability to recognize other people that are being impacted by what's going on in his life. So the high quality man has reliability, he has value, and he has what I call relational health. This is important. There are risks if we just define a high value man by the material things. We're going to see it's going to produce a sense of entitlement. It's going to create scenarios where the priority is on the optics, right? You look good, feel good, play good, pay good. You know, that whole thing. I love Deion Sanders and that saying, but these become risks because it can reduce a relationship to nothing more than a transaction. I expect this of you, you expect that of me. But when we focus on high quality, which is where I want to push, now we're building trust. Brothers, now we're creating a real sense of safety, and we're building what's more important than anything, longevity in a relationship and longevity in a marriage. So this here is a big argument that we have to make. But I'm going to be honest with you. I want to kind of double back and go in a little bit. If someone says, nah, Dr. White, you good. I got you. Character is good, but what women want is just the money. And I'm telling you that these women here, they're trying to date above their value mean because you hear all that crap. But now let's just pause for a second. And because some of you who are going to watch this, you're going to stand firm on the book of Kevin Samuels. Again, rest his soul. But you're going to stand firm on it. It is literally what you believe. You're sharing it and you're talking to people about it. So here comes the test of whether or not this is your convenient truth or your universal truth. So we see it. Women love value. Women lose value in their age. I heard y'all say that. Men gain value in their wealth. I heard y'all say that. Women are elevated on their youth in their beauty, which begins to decline. So we tell them that they need to try to get that man early where their beauty and their body is all. I heard all that. And men are evaluated by their money and their status. I heard all of that. And you believe it. I want you to hold on to that truth. No debate. Don't run from it. I want you to buy it. But here's the question I have. Do you apply those same rules to your mama? Do you apply those same rules and those teachings to your daughter? Do you have a conversation of whether or not your grandmama was a high value woman or whether or not your grandfather was a high value man? So I'm going to push the envelope there because I want to make the distinction of whether or not this is your convenient truth. It fits the argument you're trying to make and the lifestyle you're trying to live, or your universal truth where you can comfortably apply it to everybody. And I am going to challenge you and say, if you have a relationship with your daughter, if you have a relationship with your mom, you ain't going to tell her that and you ain't going to buy into it. But consider it, right? Are the product of high value men. Did your mom marry a high value man? Are you the product or the offspring of a high value man? Or did your high value dad marry a high value, low value woman? See, when we start doing that, now start looking a little different. When we start examining whether or not we grew up with this, whether or not how we see the world was shaped by that, or was our lives and how we were raised by our mother, shaped by her sacrifice, by her love, by her consistency, her protection, and her emotional presence. Those are characteristics that we kind of get. Now, I'm going to tell y'all right now, before you get too caught up in what I'm saying, there's some national stats we got to understand that still 68% of children are being raised in single-parent, female-headed households. So that means somewhere in the midst of all this, those high-value men, they ain't raising their children. So we got to look at it. I'm not going to challenge anybody. Some of y'all maintain your argument, but the qualities that often reflect high quality are not just a matter of our income. So we have to take a look at it because there's some things if we are not careful, and if some of you are going to try to teach your daughters these things, then you might be setting her up too. So there's a psychological part, if we really think about it, right, that reaches or taps into what I call our lived experience. Long-term relational success depends heavily on what? High value men or the high quality? I'm going to tell you that long-term relationships exist and they're made successful from emotional safety, high quality, communication and trust, high quality, conflict management, knowing how to do that. These are characteristics and qualities, shared values between you and your spouse and what you are passing down onto your children and reliability. So now, those of you brothers that don't have kids, you might maintain that argument. Even some of you brothers who only have sons, you might maintain that argument. But the challenge is when we start looking at it, and whether or not this literally pertains to your mother or your grandmother, something begins to happen. We put it in silos. That's what I'm saying, because the luxury lifestyles cannot compensate for the chronic disrespect that we see when value is only defined by materialism. It doesn't compensate for the emotional neglect. Y'all, I'm going in here because in the work that I do on building and strengthening families, we get deterred sometimes when we buy into these one-dimensional concepts that we can only apply to the life we're living in that moment. But the instability and the arrogance, these challenges here, when we buy into that one dimension of what constitutes a high-value man, then we're setting ourselves up, and we might very well be likely contributing to the high level of single-parent, female-headed households. So to me, a high-quality man It's someone who is able, even if he is a co-parent, he's raising his child. He has that sense of presence. If your son can't say, I want to be like my daddy, if your daughter can't say, I want to be with a man like my father, or if you're turning around saying, no, I don't want my daughter to be anybody like me, then you have been living your life by what I'm calling a convenient truth. So the real question we must ask ourselves, instead of asking, am I high value? A more powerful question is, am I high quality? Because high quality, when you begin to think about it, that's the thing that's going to strengthen the marriage. That's the thing that we're going to train our daughters on, and then they're going to know what to look for in a man. Those are going to be the things that when we look at it, that and let me just throw this side piece out here, because we're having all this high value piece in materialism, but we can't pretend like we don't see another reality. Black women, in particularly, their educational level and their graduation rates right now is exceptional. As youth, we love the argument that for some of our HBCUs, we're 1 in 17, one man to 15, 16, 17 women. We love it from a pleasure standpoint. But the truth is, they're graduating at a higher level. So then the question we'll really find ourselves confronted with, who does have the higher value? Now I'm gonna throw my disclaimer out here, because I know some of y'all are gonna be looking at this like, what the hell? I'm gonna throw my disclaimer out here. I have all daughters, right? Successful, well-educated, well-rounded daughters. And so it becomes important, because somewhere in the midst of all this dating, that they have the responsibility of finding a young man that you raised, the young man that you have passed on those values to, and then they mess around and come across a high value woman in terms of those other issues, and then we began to see where the challenges lie. So I'm going to put a lot of emphasis here on you brothers to take inventory on your quality. Yes, continue to pursue the finance. I get it. We really need to look at that, but do a self-check and a real evaluation of you and your quality. Your quality as a person, your quality as a family man. Do that inventory and look and see how that shows up on some of these men. And I'm going to challenge y'all to do this, because I really think this is something, a little homework I need y'all to do. Anytime you all see someone pushing a podcast where they're just talking about the one variable of what constitutes a high value man around materialism, do your research, look into his background, look and see how he's doing, if he's married or he's been divorced 10 times. Take inventory. See if you can find out about his relationships. Because if it is a universal truth, it's going to show up in that regard. So I'm going to say that who sets the value? If you're buying into social media, if you're buying into the podcast culture, or if you're buying into the income brackets, or when you're trying to determine what constitutes high value, are you looking at character, integrity, and the impact on others? And you do your self-inventory and ask yourself, on a scale of 1 to 10, where do I fit in that? Because the true value is not what you earned. Not only that, it's also embedded in all the other characteristics of who you are. So to be a truly well-rounded person, continue to pursue your economic wealth. Continue to succeed in the money, in the market, and in your business. Well, I want you to continue to do it, but at the same time, don't let your financial pursuits compensate for your character. Find the balance, brother. Because this conversation is going to challenge some of us. It's going to hopefully cause some of us to take a reevaluation of where we at. And in time, at some point, we're going to be able to say, yes, I'm going to amend the concept of what constitutes a high value, and say, yes, my quality of a person is equally as important. Because to ignore it, we're going to buy into and begin to really minimize those other things that are more a detriment to the family. Because in truth and in reality, when we're talking about generational wealth, it only lasts when you have another family or a generation who's happy to take your name. When we see a family or a generation who's happy to continue a tradition that you have, this is where the real value comes in. So be the high value man. Just add the quality in it. So until next time, I want you to stay reflective. I want you to stay intentional, and I need you to define your value as a man wisely. Don't get caught up in what you see on social media.